I'm now here with George Stroumboulopoulos, or Strombo.
Oh, George, please. George. Yes.
Just George. We're first name,
Yes.
Goldie.
Peter Mansbridge. You can call me Peter Mansbridge. Don't do that. George is fine.
Don't do that. I think Peter might object.
Right, he should. He should.
Yes.
He's Peter Mansbridge. He's the man in Mansbridge, man.
Uncanny resemblance.
Peter and I get that a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. It's either that or
So,
Don Cherry.
John Stewart.
No, Don Cherry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely not John Stewart.
I see that too.
That's right.
I get that. So, how have you been enjoying the Whistler Film Festival?
I like it. It's my third time here. I was here for the 5th anniversary and the 10th anniversary. It's grown tremendously, but it's always remained kind of like an intimate festival. Some festivals can sprawl.
Sundance has grown.
Sundance has grown. TIFF has done a good job of kind of remaining a little bit contained, which I think is important. Whistler does it really well, in part because of geography, but in part because of the way it's organized.
And you mean it's good that it's intimate, because a lot of filmmakers and artists I've talked to have said the same thing, because we get to really meet each other and talk and actually enjoy each other's film and get that kind of feedback, whereas a lot of them have grown so big that they've lost touch, or they're not necessarily great platforms for first-time directors.
Right. Well, and also you just need, if you're going, like everybody talks about how collaborative this business is, well then you need to have other people to collaborate with. And if you only collaborate within your own circle, over time you go to the trough one too many times, right? So you need to meet interesting people who can kind of inspire you and blow your mind, you know, you need that. And here you can find all kinds of people like that.
Are you inspired personally by what you've seen?
I'm inspired all the time, man. I want to have moments of clarity every damn day.
And wow, that's very positive. I'm trying to get into that positive mindfulness.
I'm a very positive nihilist. I'm
I'm a positive. I'm an optimistic pessimist.
not a pessimist. I think it's all going to hell, but I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with it, right?
It is all going to hell. Like, quite literally.
Right, totally.
Fallen. This is a sign. This is an omen. I think that they're not liking that. The pessimist.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just part of the flow. It's good. We picked it up. So we'll carry on. I think they're trying to tell us something. I'm going to pretend I'm going to be oblivious. I always do that.
There's nothing but now. There's only
nothing
this.
but now. This is very existential, and yet.
Right now. I learned that from Steven Seagal.
Excellent. So, now, what film stood out for you, if any?
The one that I was the most excited to check out is still. Michael McGowan, who did that film, is an incredible talent. Jamie Cromwell, the star, said it best. He said he's a gentlemanly director, and that's really a nice compliment. McGowan, they're all, I mean, look at the variety of stories. So much heartbreak, so much hope, right? But still, based on a real story that happened out east, took very little time to put together, relatively speaking, and it's a beautiful film.
And we hear that a lot. I mean, we've talked to a lot of directors. So many great films have been done, and of course more and more on a low budget, fast turnaround time. And I think that's very interesting. And Whistler promoting a lot of those types of films. What do you see the future of indie film?
I don't know if indie film is a thing. I think that just individuals are the thing, and what people want to make. If you're going to have a quicker turnaround and you're going to do it on a smaller budget, then you have to find a way to have a different impact. You can't make Avatar for $350,000, no. But you can make other things for $350,000. Paranormal Activity is a gigantic success. Eli Roth, you know, the stuff he did with Cabin Fever, that's small budget, but he had a voice.
And still good production value.
Yeah, of course. Oh, look, there's no excuse anymore, man. You can just, with a Mac and a still camera, you can make a film.
I just saw you interviewing on an iPhone.
Yes, yeah, there's no reason why you can't make a great film. Here's what technology doesn't do. The democratization of technology is wonderful, but it does not train or qualify people to be interesting, curious, or talented. So you have to learn composition, obviously. You have to learn storytelling, obviously. Technology does not improve a story.
No, and that's at the basis, and we've heard so much of that, and what a celebration of screenwriters. At the basis of this, you need a heartfelt story, a universal message that people connect to. Yeah. And speaking of which, do you think there's something distinctively Canadian about the films, it's particularly the Canadian films, or Canadian cinema? What do you think is different, if anything?
Listen, I don't work in Canadian cinema that very often, but I don't really think about it in those terms. I don't want to apply a national identity to a film. I think that's actually the problem. That should be an NFB documentary, and that's important. Those are amazing. That's what I learned about Canada, right? But I don't think that should be the reason, or that should be a key component of making a Canadian film.
Or even getting necessarily funding from others.
Yeah, I mean, the funding model is a longer, complicated story.
Right.
But if a Canadian makes a film, it's a Canadian film.
Right.
That's it. It's it. You know, I'm amazed at how many Canadian films that are made in America that don't get recognized by the Academy up here because the money's not from here, right? And then if it's about the money, well, then it's a banking industry, and it's not film. If a Canadian makes a film, it's Canadian. If it's about Canada, fine. If it's not, fine.
Well, we often get criticized for that, and not just filmmakers, but actors and musicians, that they get recognized abroad in the States first, and then have to come back here to be recognized.
That's the fault of the
Do you
Canadian
think that's
media.
still?
Yeah, of course.
You said, and you touch yourself. The
Oh,
fault.
no, it's not my fault.
Right.
I mean, I'm doing my part. Yeah. No, I think, honestly, you want the honest answer? I think the Canadian media is kind of not all of them, but there's an element of whiny brick throwers. The Canadian print media especially, not film media, but I noticed a lot, and to a degree in radio, television not so much. Television I find is very supportive. But there's a lot of people talking about the shit they don't like. And they're always going on about how this doesn't work and this doesn't work and this doesn't work.
It's like a victimhood.
Yeah, well, no, what it is just kind of like cynicism.
Complacent.
It's cynicism. Yeah. And cynicism is super boring. Critical thinking is interesting, but cynicism is boring to me.
Because it just stops you dead in your tracks, right? I mean, what are you going to...
Also, why do I care what that person thinks? They've never made a film, right? So what I think is there's no failure in a film at this stage of the Canadian business. There's no failure. So if the film worked or didn't work for an audience, there's a myriad of reasons why that may or may not be the case. But it's the development of those people who are working on the films that's important, right? And those are the people that would never, Joss Whedon has a big weekend with a couple of movies. When his TV shows were canceled, he'd been branded a failure by these same people, right? But it's development. It's all about development.
It's a process, and it's not, you're not only as good as your last success or your last project.
No, it takes time.
Yeah.
No, if you have a stroke of genius, right, and you get it right the first time overnight, who gets it right the second time?
And then there's so much pressure too to live up to that.
Pressure, you just can be there anyway. You have to kind of go through life not caring, right? I think that's the way to do that. But it's just this idea of, like, care about the things that matter. Don't care about the other things. At least for me, that's just how my brain chemistry works. I think there are. Like, I get criticism, and I think it's fine, but it's really counterproductive. And I will say this, it is the responsibility of the entire Canadian media to play a role in building up Canadian. It's also...
Because the Americans do it. They do. They promote their own.
They do it wonderfully. But we're more British in that respect. The British, the Irish, the tall poppy syndrome. Was that old? Nah, they hammer too. Oh, yeah, it's like that old Irish fable, that quote. Which is the difference between an American and you can apply Canadian to that.
I'm a dual citizen, by the way.
You can talk about American or Canadian, British, Irish. In America, they see a big fancy house on the hill, and they say one day I'm going to live in that house, right? And in Canada, and England, and Ireland, we walk by and we see that house, and we go, one day I'm going to get that. Like, that's the difference between the way that has to change. That has to change, right? And I think it is changing now. I think younger people are hopefully more supportive. Like, it's super boring to do this alone. You want to do this with
definitely
an industry.
The group. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. They're shutting down around us. Thank you so much as you head off for taking the time to chat with me.